Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another fun-filled stream. So today I am super excited to have UnWokeable here, who is a chapter leader for the Notorious Fair, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, out in Oklahoma. And I'm actually really excited because I still have yet to discover what fair chapters actually do. And I'm not saying they don't do anything, but like here, just to preface for everyone here about why I want, one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is like I meet people that are involved in fair chapters like all the time. Like if I go to an event or someone, like someone will always come up and introduce themselves and be like, "Hi, I'm such and such, and I'm involved with fair, and I'm in my local chapter." And the very first thing I always ask is like, "What do fair chapters do?" And the answer I get is, well, we have meetings and I don't know. And so I actually am genuinely curious to find out what they're doing. But the other reason I really love UnWokeable, and I just want to share my screen here, UnWokeable is the designer of the Notorious based hoodie. And I think there's a t-shirt version as well. And you may, yeah, there is, right?
There's 4 different versions of it. Yeah, there's a V-neck t-shirt and a regular t-shirt and a hoodie, and yeah.
And you may remember this from so this is a panel I was on with James Lindsay and Chris Rufo like a couple of weeks ago, and here is James Lindsay wearing the based shirt. And I think this is actually like James Lindsay's words, isn't it?
Oh yeah, well, except for the Shoats and Eats and quote underneath, but everything on the back is all James. I just put it together, put it on a shirt. So
awesome. I love it. Well, you guys can pick up this hoodie or t-shirt. I linked it in the description below. I linked it right before we went live. So if you were waiting for us to go live and it's not there, just like hit the refresh. It'll pop right up. But then I've also got his Substack in here as well. He's doing great work in trying to hold the leadership at the University of Oklahoma, right? Accountable, because they're doing some woke nonsense at OU, and they really shouldn't be because they're not supposed to be according to the law in their state. And I'm sure we're going to get into talk about that as well, but definitely connect with UnWokeable on Twitter. I've got the Substack link in there, and of course we've got the based hoodie shirt in there. But I just want to jump right in, and thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. I really appreciate it.
I am happy to be here. We've talked for a little while. I've watched you for longer than we've talked, obviously, and we started the fair chapter. I think it was in around April, and so a group of business owners got in touch with me, just wondering what was going on in schools. You know, right when James and Chris really blew this thing up. And I had been working for almost 1.5 to 2 years before that, fighting with OU about the issue. And so I had developed some ties and had some successful people come to me and say, "Hey, what can we do?" And I volunteered fair. I had read about it. Chris Rufo was on the board. Barry Weiss was on the board. Daryl Davis. It seemed like a great apparatus. It was national. It had backing, and it had a great message. I'm a student of Martin Luther King. I'm a student of history in general. If you look, I've got John F. Kennedy, and it doesn't matter the party to me. I'm kind of a president nerd, but also Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement's always been a really big interest for me, and studying his words and his writings in full context. And that, I think that's the key, right? And so when they came out, I was like, this is the group we need to go with. And also the part of it was that we thought there was a lot of people pushing at that time, especially saying, well, you're a racist. If you're against critical race theory, you're a racist, all of that. And FAIR really had the message that seemed to blunt that, at least in our community. And so that really helped.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a very you wouldn't necessarily think that like Oklahoma would be the place that a lot of this is spinning up, but there is actually a very active anti-CRT like unwoke community in Oklahoma, right?
Oh yes, yeah. There's a very active unwoke community, but here's the thing: there's also a very active woke community, especially as you get closer to OU, which is the epicenter. And if you study what's going on in Norman right now, it is Austin 2.0. You know, it really, they're taking it over, and everything. Our mayor is a professor at OU, so that says anything. Yeah. So I've been going hard at them, and FAIR see, and we'll get into that, but that's kind of some of the issues that we've experienced with FAIR, just in kind of as they're getting off the ground, is what you can and can't do, what you can and can't say in terms of political figures and endorsements and things like that. Some of it makes sense. Some of it was frustrating at the very beginning. So, but yes, we have a very active anti-CRT, pro-human apparatus here in Oklahoma, and we are fighting the good fight, because here in red state Oklahoma, the most conservative state in the country, it is pervasive and it's covert, which I think makes it more dangerous, right? Because they've really honing their craft and how they can. It's not in the curriculum, but they develop so many different ways to get it right under the radar and right in front of your kids, and influence the way they think from the beginning. So,
and well, it's funny that you say that, because I actually had a whistleblower forward me an email that the dean of the School of Education at OU sent out to all the staff, basically saying, here's how we get around the anti-CRT law. And she didn't say that explicitly, but that is exactly what the email was. So they're so sneaky about it. And I'm so happy that you guys are like, you're active, you're paying attention, you're helping people understand what's going on, because I think that the biggest thing that gets lost in this entire battle is just translating what is going on to average person.
Yes. Yes. And I think James really hits on this, although he can spout off, and
he's a little verbose sometimes.
Yes, but I think when he was here and he came to visit, he spent a week out here, which was great. You just read their own words. If you just read their own words, that's the quickest thing.
James Lindsay in person has got this down. He's gotten very, very, like, I went to his workshop in Tampa when he did his first kind of like workshop, and I was just like, it was a day and a half of James Lindsay just talking about like the background and history of this, and I was just like, he has gotten really, really good at it. I still think it's a little too big. Like, I think it's, and I don't want to poo-poo anything that James Lindsay does, because I think that James Lindsay is doing exactly what he should be doing. I think it's awesome. I still think that there's a measure of translation that needs to get done between James Lindsay and, again, like, average person that's busy, that's not going to spend a day and a half at a critical race theory workshop, that just like wants to come home and like hang out with their kids and like all this stuff. Anyway, but and there needs to be, like, I'm trying to step into that role a little bit. I think I actually think like these small communities are like these social support groups that are popping up. I actually think that that's the most critical, and having people like you that are really kind of paying attention and can help people that that you see in person understand what it is. I think that that's actually the most effective way to do it. Anyway, so you started a FAIR chapter.
Yes, we started a FAIR chapter, and instantly, once we signed up, let me say this, not instantly. We signed up. I actually signed up right at the very beginning of FAIR, like in terms of trying to be a member. There was no chapter in Oklahoma at that point. There weren't many chapters at all.
Right.
And so I signed up for their newsletter and trying to get in their information, and they were backlogged for a long time. And because I don't think they had the apparatus to deal with the kind of influx of people that they got, which was a great problem to have, but that frustrated me in the beginning because I didn't understand that. I was like, where are you guys at? I want to be a part of this, and didn't quite get reached out to. And then like, I met with my two friends who are chapter co-chairs. We all kind of run this. They do a lot more of the logistical stuff, the hard work. I'm more of the message guy and trying to write about giving us stuff to talk about, especially in the early times when FAIR didn't have all the curriculum and the kind of things that they give you now. But yeah, we started and we signed up and we waited. Right. And it was kind of a long time. And actually, we didn't get their attention until we had been trying to get their attention. And then I turned my name on Twitter into FAIR for All Oklahoma. And,
I bet that did it.
And well, what happened is that I'm in the James Lindsay school of Twitter. Me
too. We're the same. Yeah, we're the same.
Yes, we don't really pull punches, and FAIR was going for a kind of a sleeker look, in social media, and I can understand that. But when I started tweeting what I usually tweet with that moniker, we got their attention, and within, a few days we had a meeting. And man, I will tell you this: these are the nicest people, especially
they're very nice.
the person. Well, I'm going to talk about the lower end, the volunteer coordinator who runs the volunteers. I mean, oh my gosh, she's with you when she can be there. She'll drop everything to talk to you, and that's a great apparatus. And as we've gotten moving forward and have, at the weekly or bi-weekly meetings, sharing information, that has been the biggest thing that FAIR does well, I think, is the connection of these chapter leaders and saying, hey, what's going on in Minneapolis? What's going on in Canada or wherever it would be? That's what FAIR does really well, and coordinates those things so we can talk and say, okay, well, if this is going on in your community, how are you seeing it here? Is it just in social studies, or is it in English, or what are you seeing here? And so that's been really, really good. But after that, when we started the process, we kind of got all this paperwork saying, okay, you have to. They were very clear about what they didn't want on social media.
I've heard about this list. I have heard that there is a list of things that you cannot say on social media if you are connected and represent, or not even representing FAIR, but just like connected with FAIR.
I haven't gotten the connected part, and I that's something I've dug into a little bit. I can't find the specific list, but when we met the first time, I'm kind of an auditory. I'm a a music person, and so I remember more by hearing. I listen to books. I'll buy them, but I listen to them. And so I remember the first meeting, and it was just basically, if you're going to put the FAIR moniker on your social media, and this is pointed at me at that point because I had kind of violated the rules even before we got in, that you have to maintain a level of civility that, in my opinion, which is why I went into the UnWokeable. I mean, I had my what do you call it on Twitter? The @ sign, the tag, or whatever.
Handle.
Yes, the handle. I'm so sorry. But my handle's Acts Against CRT, just because I was trying to stay under the radar when I first started my Twitter. But I switched to the UnWokeable for this reason, because I knew that in Oklahoma, that the way you kind of have to talk and get people's attention, it takes a lot. not a lot of people are on Twitter, but when they are, you share it to Facebook or you share it and they see it around, you need to grab their attention, and they're used to kind of an in-your-face way of doing things, right? And that has always been a struggle with me at FAIR. So that's why I went to the UnWokeable side of things, in terms of me doing my own thing. And they never really commented on that. So if I broke their rules, I haven't seen the list that you're talking about. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I've also had trouble getting into my account. But I figured out that
your account was mysteriously turned off after you retweeted me. I heard.
Well, it wasn't turned off. I just couldn't get into it.
Okay.
So I had said, I think about the same time that Chris Rufo got, was getting hacked on Google. I was getting hacked on Google. Same thing on Facebook and all of that, because I had been messaging him back and forth, and so my paranoid brain went that direction. I was like, "Oh, did I really tick them off?" No, it was an operator malfunction.
Okay,
so I figured that out.
I retract. I will, be ethically honest.
Yeah, well, but you didn't know until I just told you, right? Yeah, and so then what I had said was I was fearful that maybe I'd take them off, and they were restricting my access because of leakers or whatever, and
I know that they've done that though, so it's a thing too. But if they didn't with you, like beautiful.
Not as far as I know. Now, I'll look into it more, but it opened and everything was good the other day, and it was a password issue or something. So. Other than that, let me just get back to where we were. And then they were really good, and this was early on, right? So they didn't have all of the stuff you see now, the transparency and the reporting and the legal aid fund and all of that, all of that I think is great. But they also didn't really have a plan of action for what our chapters were supposed to do, right? And again, coming from the James Lindsay School of Twitter, he talks about this being a war online. This is a war of information. It's a war of narrative. And they have a very specific narrative. And one that I agree with, pro-human. Martin Luther
Mhm.
King, not by the color of your skin, but by the content of your character. But when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of having these arguments online or trying to convince people online, and whether it be tense or non-tense, both myself and my other chapter leaders kind of felt a little bit hamstrung.
Mhm.
And this is something I brought up with them, that,
Okay.
and I think we can get into the conversation I had with Bion and also the chapter volunteer coordinator.
Yeah.
But let me just, that's towards the end of the conversation. But I told them, I said, we are missing the Martin Luther King activism part. What do we do? How do we mobilize? Because activism, at least on the center right, the milquetoast Republicans here in Oklahoma, sometimes it's a bad word,
Yeah.
right? It's a very bad word. And I mentioned that to FAIR, and they kind of got that connotation. And I think they shy away from it a little bit to their detriment, because Martin Luther King got the attention of the masses through activism, through putting people out there and saying, I will not stand for this. Now, it was peaceful, nonviolent, but they were there and they would not be moved. We will not be moved. We shall overcome it, right? And so
Mhm.
that's the part that FAIR is missing. And I think that when you hear your chapter leaders like myself say, what does FAIR do? FAIR does a lot at the top, and
Mhm.
FAIR does a lot supporting the chapter leaders. But it's up to the chapter leaders to figure out what to do on their own right now, in terms of getting people together. We always have meetings, but those, in my experience here, kind of just devolve into griping sessions, right? And then
Right.
it's like, what do we do now, right?
Yeah.
And so what hamstrung me with them was that I was going after the mayor here
Mhm.
very hard, and they have a very strict policy right now because of their 501c3 status, or whatever that may be,
They
that
don't have
they
501(c)(3) status. They have a fiscal sponsor.
right, yes, well, and that's something I actually can speak to, but they're going for 501c3 status, right?
In theory, I'm not. I have had, and listen, I don't want to make any accusations, but I
No.
will say that I have had like 4 different people try to figure out if they have actually filed for 501(c)(3) status, and
Hmm.
people who usually can find this stuff out very, very easily, not a single one of them has been able to find evidence of a filing for 501(c)(3) or 501(c)(4) status. Now, that's not necessarily like a gotcha, because they do have a fiscal sponsor for the, they're operating with the oversight of a fiscal sponsor for the nonprofit. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about what they're doing. I
Hmm.
absolutely have questions about where the money in the advocacy fund is going, because the advocacy fund is different than the nonprofit fund, and I
Hmm.
have very real questions about that. But there might be there might not be there. If anyone from FAIR wants to just release the paperwork and let us know where that is, that would be, I think, a really good first step, because we're FOIAing it anyway, so we're gonna find out one way or the other. But I like, neither here nor there. And like, I want to make something clear, to everyone watching. And we talked about this briefly before we went on the air. Like, my goal here is not to shit on FAIR if FAIR is actually doing good things. Like, I
Hmm.
want FAIR to be successful. I want FAIR to do good things. I think part of the, and I have absolutely no issue with people who are involved at the local level, like you and the like I think that that's awesome. We want as many people involved as possible. I have no issue with, I'm sure, many of the employees at FAIR, who I'm sure are extremely nice people who are coming in and trying to do a good thing and doing the best they can. I have issue with the executive leadership of FAIR and how the organization is being run from a senior level, simply
Hmm.
because I've talked to way too many people behind the scenes right now who have had bad interactions with them. And so, I really like, what you're describing to me in terms of like the chapters being kind of like, and I'm an organizational psychologist, so I know how to sniff around when something is going wrong in an organization.
Hmm.
And that's just something I'm interested in. So I think when you talk about like not knowing what the chapters kind of being left on their own to kind of figure out what to do, that completely aligns with what I suspected was going on, because it's one of those things. Like I said, I ask people what FAIR chapters do like all the time, and I've never been given a clear answer about that. And I think that I like what you said very much about, like, you know, they're not providing guidance in terms of like the activism piece of it. Because for me, when I see buy-in writing things like, you know, we have 70 fair chapters, okay, great. What are those chapters actually doing? What is being accomplished by those chapters? Are you running school board candidates? Are you protesting? Are you providing a griping session? Which I think there's absolute value in a griping session, especially like we need to get things off our chest to be able to proceed productively. But I've never been able to get a clear answer about what they're actually doing and what those 70 chapters mean.
Right. Well, and I think that's because the activism component is missing. And that's
Yeah.
one main thing that I have said to them is that we and this goes into the whole DOJ letter thing, which is my main gripe
Oh yeah.
because
We'll get to that in a
of
sec. Yeah.
yeah, we will get to that because that's why I'm here,
Yeah.
to be honest. And I told them, and I won't say anything to you that I haven't said to them. And they know that, you know that, but it's the activism part of it, because I think that there is a fear that every mid to large group of people that are protesting against CRT discrimination, because that's what it is, discrimination, are going to be viewed as insurrectionists.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a soft spot for FAIR. They are very much, I think, a little more aligned in view. When I say view, I mean the way that they want to be looked at as a little more center left than center right now. And that is so evident in the DOJ letter. And that was my sharpest criticism for the volunteer coordinator when I met with her, and also Bion when I talked to him.
Well, let's wait to get into that specifically, because I want to make a statement at like a higher level about what you just said, because I think that this is really important. I think that one of my big issues with FAIR is that I've seen them routinely cut out any, like, if you supported Trump publicly at all, like, you will not be involved with FAIR. They will not do it. So it's like, it's very much like they build themselves as a nonpartisan organization. But to me, nonpartisan means you have people that have all types of belief. You're not going to discriminate. You're not going to discriminate against people because of their political views or who they support politically. But I'm seeing actively that FAIR actively discriminates against people on the right. And to me, that's not acceptable, especially when, you know, I'm a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm a liberal. I voted for Trump, and I have no shame in saying that. And I also think it's kind of this thing where it seems like they're trying to appeal too much to like the left. Quite frankly, they're trying. Let me rephrase. They're trying too hard not to offend people on the left, that they hold back from doing what is correct and what is right and what would actually be aligned with their mission. And I do think that the DOJ letter is a perfect example of this.
Yes, and I think they have fallen prey to what I'm started calling preemptive narrative, right? Where it's, you know, everything. If Trump breathed wrong, right, he was a Nazi. Like if he had 2 scoops of ice cream, well, of course he did, because he's a Nazi. Everything he did was Nazi fascism. And I think now what they're kind of facing a little bit is this stark reality of the fact that fascism, which is the Nazi model, the base of the Nazi model, is being implemented now through Biden's policies. And there's probably a healthy amount of them, maybe more than a healthy amount, that voted for Biden. And that is a blind spot, I think, that they have, that they've fallen. They don't want to risk battling the preemptive narrative that if it's Trump based or Trump focused or even just too far right, because the worst thing I think that liberals, or not even classical liberals, but 1990s liberals, okay, let's do that, is they would rather be called racist than conservative. You know, that is the fear. I think it's like, okay, well, I know FAIR knows how to deal with a racism argument, but the conservative argument is a little tougher for them.
Well, I want to just bring something up though, because this is part of one of the issues that I have with them. Because if I go on FAIR's website right now, and I'll try to make this a little bit bigger so people can see, and I look up FAIR's principles of peaceful change based on Dr. Martin Luther King's principles of nonviolence, number one is exercising moral courage. Telling the truth in a way is a way of life for courageous people. Peaceful change cannot happen without a commitment to the truth. And then we have build bridges, which to me would seem like, connecting the two sides together. And, and these to me are values. I agree with all these values. These values are fine. These values are beautiful. I don't see them being exercised by the organization that says these are our values.
Right. Well, and I don't know if you want to get into the DOJ letter there, but that's
let's do it. We're going there anyway. Let's
go.
Let's dig into the meat of the problem.
Well, because it is.
This
Go
is
ahead.
the meat of the, I mean, this is like, so for people who don't know, just to bring you up to speed. So of course we had this absurd letter come out from the National Association of School Boards that basically said that we want all parents to be labeled as domestic terrorists. We now of course know that they worked with the White House in crafting that letter, so the White House could give the response that they wanted to give, which is to have the Attorney General say, yes, we're going to classify parents as domestic terrorists. And FAIR, I mean, many organizations issued a response to this. There were many great letters that came out that were very strong rebuttals to what Merrick Garland and the DOJ did, and said this is not correct. We're not going to stand for this. FAIR issued, I'm sorry, this is the original thing that started this whole thing for me, the most pathetic, mealy mouth, milquetoast letter I have ever read in my life. And it was just like, the letter basically said, we trust the government to do the right thing. We're not going to be violent and we trust you to do the right thing. And I was like, are you kidding me? Are you on acid? Like, what do you even stand for, FAIR? Because if you can't tell the DOJ to go screw when they're telling you that they're going to label parents who are speaking up at school board meetings as domestic terrorists, then what are you doing with those millions of dollars? I want to know. I want accountability. And that was how the whole thing started for me. But how did you take that?
No, that was exactly how I took it, honestly, because the way that I viewed FAIR, with whatever frustrations we had in terms of just getting things off the ground or whatever goes, was they're supposed to be the angel on your shoulder, right? If something goes down, right, your larger organizations are those stealth bombers like James Lindsay is, right? I mean, if you're getting and I've had that happen here where he'll retweet something I'm trying to push here in Oklahoma because it's and you've done the same thing actually, and where it's then you get this kind of push.
Other. Like it's what we do, and James Lindsay is awesome about this. Anytime I need James Lindsay to retweet something, he will. I'm sure it's the same with you. Yeah,
well, yes, most of the time, and that has helped. That helped push 1775. It helped, which is the bill that banned critical race theory in Oklahoma, and just getting through some of those kinds of things. But FAIR, this was bigger than any one person, and that's what FAIR is for, right? Is when you have the government sending a letter saying that they are going to send the FBI to investigate parents who are exercising their constitutional, but let's just put this, I love Thomas Jefferson, writing my dissertation on Thomas Jefferson. The God who gave us right gave us liberty at the same time. That is, I'm a Christian, but if you're not, Jefferson wasn't either. You call it, or nature's God, that when you're born, you have the right to speak, and you have the right to speak to power. And when the government then comes down and says, hey, we don't like what you're saying to these school board members, we're going to send the police state of the federal government after you. And even if it's just strongly implied, because that's what I'll get into about what I didn't like about the response from FAIR, but also in my conversations with them, was that it was kind of a pivot to the NSB letter, the National School Boards Association letter, which was much more pointed, right, in what they wanted and why they wanted it.
Yeah.
But they seemed in the explanations to me, they seemed to negate that there was any connection.
So let me, I just want to unpack this for people who may not, because like we've been talking about this, so we may skip over details that are important.
Oh, yes.
Who haven't been involved in those conversations.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So you have had now 2 meetings with FAIR since this letter came out. You had a meeting with their volunteer coordinator, and you had a meeting with Bayan himself, the CEO, yesterday. And so you were asking them, like, what the heck happened with this DOJ letter? And they aren't answering that question. They're instead pivoting to the response they sent to the school board association, which to me are like two very different things, because to be honest, the National School Board, that's like a lobbying group. They
Right.
don't have institutional power to do anything.
Right.
All they can do is write, like, heated letters or whatever. It's like a PR move. The government is a totally different thing. Like, weaponizing the DOJ and the FBI is a completely next level thing, and that should have been the strongest response so far as I'm concerned. So
Yes.
first you had a conversation with the volunteer coordinator. What did she tell you?
Well, it was pretty much the same thing. I dug in a little deeper with her. We had more time, but what she said was that she mentioned the Maud Maron article
Maud
that
Maron,
she had written, Maud Maron, and that was a stronger, but it wasn't fair. It wasn't on the fair letterhead. It was something that they promoted, but it wasn't fair. And then they said they had a much stronger response to the NSB letter. And I made the same exact point you just made, which is NSB. It's like you're going after the NEA or something, right? It's not. It's made to push a viewpoint, but
Right.
when that viewpoint, that corporational viewpoint, right, gets then grabbed by the government. And let's give the government and the National School Boards Association the utmost of charity. Let's try that for just hypothetical, right? Let's give them that there was no collusion, right, between the two. Doesn't matter, because the appearance of the collusion in just the succession of time created self-censorship. I know it did. It created self-censorship here in Oklahoma.
It did, but I should also say that just in case people haven't seen, like, and you may not have seen, like, there are emails that came out today that prove conclusively there was coordination. And I knew about this a couple of weeks ago, but like there's an article in the Free Beacon today, I retweeted it earlier, that they FOIA'd all the emails. And so you can actually see the email exchanges going back between the government and the school board association. And so there was absolute collusion in this.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like I believe FAIR gave both the DOJ and the NSB charity they didn't deserve, and knowingly didn't deserve. Because when you're talking about Randy Weingarten, you're talking about how the NEA or all of those lobbying groups, the teachers associations, and I'm a teacher, certified for 15 years. I've been certified teacher, right? The influence they had over, the COVID restrictions. I don't know if I can say that. I'm sorry if I'm on.
You're fine. You're fine. You're
fine.
Okay. I'll correct if I need to.
Okay. But the undue influence that they've had on the Biden administration already, those type of groups should have been the indication to FAIR that they should not have given that much charity to saying, well, that wasn't necessarily connected. And I think that's what I did not find at all satisfactory in their explanation. And I said that to them. I said, their response was, well, we were trying to craft a pro-human response. And my response to that was, in order to be pro-human, you have to protect human rights. Right. And when you have a government that's overstepping its bounds in direct connection, or at least making the distinction without a difference, right, it caused self-censorship just because of the order of events of what we knew at the time. They were hampering human rights in a very direct way. And they was absolutely going after a very certain specific group of people that have spent the better part of a year trying to build up the courage enough to show their faces, because that has been the biggest problem in even getting people involved in a FAIR chapter. They are scared. And you're talking about a year ago, way more scared to step out, poke their head out, especially if they're a teacher, especially if they're a student, or like me, a grad student at OU or whatever it would be. That fear has taken a lot of time and effort on our part as a FAIR chapter to say, we are not afraid. You do not need to be afraid. You've got morality on your side. You've got the truth on your side. And it's taken a lot of.
I'm just going to bring this up again.
Okay.
Exercise moral courage.
Right. Right.
That's what it is. We have the moral high ground here. There was no reason to dick around with this. And I honestly, like, I would not label that DOJ letter as a pro-human response. That DOJ letter was literally a pro-government response. It says, we trust you to make the right decision. You trust
Yeah.
the government.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, why did anyone in leadership, I don't know who crafted that letter, but Biden, and so far as I'm concerned, is ultimately responsible. Like, why did he think that saying, I trust the government to do the right thing, was a pro-human response? The government is not human.
Yeah. Well, the government is comprised of humans, but right now the humans that are comprising it are attacking our civil liberties on a mass level.
Right.
And whether you're talking about, the pandemic, or you want to talk about CRT, so many different ways. And that is what I think. And when I talked to Bion, there's one part of his explanation that made some sense, but he took it too far, which is the part that made some sense was that he did not want, and this goes into what I think you've said before and what I told them, that he did not want people who have voted for Biden and or that lean center left, or even just really left, like you said, you're before this you were pretty much a torch carrying liberal. Yeah, you're a liberal
all my life. Yeah,
right.
I'm a liberal.
Yeah, and
not a progressive, but a liberal.
Right. Well, and that's a distinct difference, right? But that people who tend to go that direction would have read a response that was more, I think, appropriate as signing up for kind of the Trump wing of the Republican Party, right? And that's what the center left, or the left portion of FAIR and the classical liberals have a real problem with. And Bion articulated that to me. It was, we're trying to, make sure that we don't have a reaction from that part because CRT is more pervasive in the blue states. And
that's not true.
Right. And that's what I had said to him.
Yeah.
And that goes into my other point, which was you need more representation, at least in your ear, of people who are dealing with this situation in red states.
Yeah, and there's so much to unpack in what you just said, and I think that the biggest overarching thing that I'm hearing that I kind of thought was true, but now you've given me absolute confirmation that it's true, is that 1, Biden has TDS. 2, Biden does not communicate with people who are not on his probably left-leaning team, which is fine. People can have, well, it's not fine in this context, but like on a personal level, I don't really care what Biden's politics are. It is none of my business. It is his business. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that Biden is making the argument, number 1, that CRT is more pervasive in blue states than red states, that is just factually untrue. Now, red states may be doing more to fight it at this point, and that makes sense considering the politics of it, but that's just factually untrue. CRT is in every school that exists out there because CRT is infiltrated through the schools, which I'm sure as a teacher. And so the fact that he doesn't understand that gives me pause. The other thing I'll say is that, to me, what you just said, and I mean, Gabrielle Clark's in the chat. Thank you for the super chat, Gabs. He didn't want to offend his liberal donors. I think that that's exactly what it was. It's like classical liberals voted for Trump. Like, I don't like modifying the term liberal with classical, so I just call myself a liberal. But the fact of the matter is that between Joe Biden and Donald Trump was actually the more liberal candidate. And people who don't have Trump derangement syndrome, who are actually more clued into what was going on, who are actually looking at it just from a logical perspective, knew that Trump was the more liberal candidate. Donald Trump was the one that banned CRT in the federal government. Like, that was what won him my vote at the end of the day. And the fact that Biden doesn't know this, and he's so scared at offending the people who have Trump here's what it is. Biden is literally trying not to offend people who are not connected to reality. He is trying to offend people who are so disconnected from what is really happening that he's pissing off every single one of us who's been fighting back against this for, frankly, a lot longer than he has, that are connected and plugged into reality.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's this huge portion. I'm seeing so many people that voted for Biden that would call them, that were never Trumpers, right? TDS to the max in the last, since he's taken office, go, holy man, what is going on? And
It's the best red pill ever, right?
Right. Well, I mean, you just have to look around and just, especially those that keep up with the news and look at all of those, again, those preemptive narratives that were designed to make people think that Trump was the fascist by redefining the term fascist to mean whatever Trump did in the moment. Right. And then equate that all the way leading up to January 6th. And again, January 6th, violence is wrong. Right.
Yes,
they shouldn't have
we can all
stormed
say that.
Right. Violence was wrong. You should not have stormed the Capitol. But this is actually how I got connected with James Lindsay, just a tangent a little bit, is that as soon as that happened, I'm a history nerd. I do it for fun. Like, that's what I watch documentaries. I read history for fun. And it is the Reichstag fire in 36. You know, it's no, I don't think anybody's determined conclusively who started that, but they're 90% sure it was the Nazis. But they started the fire to use that to go after the people they didn't want in society.
Exactly. And you know, but
and that
go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say that directly leads to the DOJ letter.
Well,
right?
I just want to say real quick about January 6th. Like, yeah, we'll go on a slight tangent. Did you see this video that was going around today? Thomas Massey tweeted it, where it was like, it was a Fed that they caught on multiple occasions on January 6th saying, guys, we need to storm the building. We need to go inside. And then you have Trump supporters, and this is on video. I retweeted it earlier. You have Trump supporters saying, no, dude, you're a Fed. We're not going inside. And they actually caught this guy multiple times telling people, let's go storm the Capitol. And when they busted down the barrier, that guy was in the front. He was right there when it happened. And so, like, talk about like setting people up. Like, you know, anyone who's at, and Brian would know this if he ever talked to Trump supporters, anyone who's ever been to a Trump rally knows these people are not violent people. They're not. And I frankly think, and I've said this, I was there on January 6th. I was on that Capitol lawn. I saw at least 50,000 people standing around and waving their flags and chanting their chants. And if those Trump supporters had wanted to burn down that building, if they were actually BLM and Antifa, the house would not, the Capitol would not exist right now. There were too many people there. There was nothing they can do. The police weren't doing anything anyway. So I don't know, slight tangent, but
no, that is, and I hadn't seen that video, but I did see a video yesterday where it's, you know, they have almost a promulgate of cops like flanking the people as they walk into the Capitol. Right. They were waving them, and then they just stood there and they were like talking to them as they walked in. And it's like, you know, and that's the other thing. I've always wondered why, other than the obvious reasons, you know, there was just no media coverage of the riots over the summer. And that's a big thing. When I was here in Norman, Oklahoma, which is, you know, the most liberal city in the state, and I'm at the college, which is very liberal, progressive, and are woke. It was, well, none of those riots are happening. That's all just, and I would say, go listen to Brett Weinstein. Just listen. He lives there. Go listen. And when I would show them, it would just blow their heads off because they were protecting the narrative that they were setting up for January 6th.
Yep.
Because none of that would have worked in the mainstream media for January 6th had it not been for them protecting the violence that happened all over the summer. Right. And framing that in a different way. And so that gets us right to what the DOJ letter is kind of a coming to fruition of that. Right. It's, if you think about the Reichstag fire, it wasn't just like fire, then, you know, Holocaust. Right. It wasn't that. It was years of policies that led up to a very deadly, the most deadly event in history. Right. And so that gets me into also what has been hard here in Oklahoma with FAIR is that we had a situation that brought this back up again just a few months ago. The GOP tweeted out and shared on Facebook comparing the policies, the mandates, and the vaccine passport situation to the gold stars, right? That they would make Jews wear. And so, but all of the Republicans, from the governor to the you know all the way down to the Republican club on campus, denounced that comparison as being anti-Semitic.
It's not anti-Semitic. That's not the point.
Right. Well, but actually, it's pro. It's pro. It's pro-Semitic, if you want to say it that way. But because the victims of that horrific time in history demand that we remember what policies led to it.
Yeah.
Right. And I was shocked to see just this immediate reaction from all of the Republicans, and almost everybody in Oklahoma is a Republican of some kind. So there you have a spectrum along those lines, but denouncing their own party chair.
Mm-hmm.
Because he made a historically accurate comparison. And this is another preemptive narrative, because they called Trump a Nazi and a fascist so many times, so much that, and we would make the argument that you're not basing this anything other than you don't like Trump, not about his policies. He doesn't have fascistic policies. He doesn't do anything that is overtly fascist. He could have locked down the whole country. He could have locked down the whole country and did not do it, to the chagrin, I'm sure, of the Democrats.
In fact, he wanted to open things up a lot quicker than a lot of other people. He wanted things open.
Right. Well, and he had done that, but you fought them calling them a fascist and a Nazi under correct terms. But then to say, okay, he's an actual person. And this is another thing that Fair talks about, right? Fair talks about, we're going against ideas, not people, right? And that's why this really ticked me off, because it was, they were calling Trump a fascist, right? But then when we make the comparison, or we say, hey, there's an actual fascist policy, not a person, because Trump is a person. He has a beating heart, living spirit, he's a person. But when we compare policies, historically, place them side by side, that's what Fair should go after. And that's what the DOJ was doing. Yeah. It was a policy. You didn't have to attack a person. Right. And that's where I said, you have to have a more full-throated response to actual tyranny, to actual fascism. Because if there was a problem at a local school board, right? Mm-hmm. Call your local police department.
Yeah.
Why involve the DOJ and the FBI unless you're trying to suppress the activism?
Right. And of course, there was no mention in the Fair letter that they didn't even provide any examples. And the one example they did provide, we now know that that father was at that school board meeting defending his daughter. And we can't say the word that happened to the daughter because of the YouTubes, but everyone knows, or you should know, what is Luke? Oh God, what is Luke's last name? Starts with an R. Daily Wire has done reporting on it, and he's done a wonderful job. I just want to say, Real Nick Miles stopping in to say hello. Hey Nick, appreciate the super chat. But no, I agree with you. It's like there were so many ways. Honestly, Fair could have just even looked at the other letters that came out. That letter that had the multiple signatories, like Parents Defending Ed and No Left Turn and Moms for Liberty. It had 18 different signatories. That was a strongly worded letter about policy. That was a great letter. It didn't need to be something that was bombastic, but it was a strongly worded, this is unacceptable. And Fair could have even just done a monkey see, monkey do, and they didn't. And I really, and I know that they've since tried to correct that. They released a 12-page annotated memo that I think is a little bit of a ridiculous response. But they're trying to correct it. But my position is, it's no one ever reads the retraction. You read the initial letter, and they are the biggest player in the game, and they have the most money in the game, and they have the most resources in the game, and they need to do better. They need to do their job better.
Right. And that is, I 100% agree with that. And that's exactly what I told them, because the effect, and this is what I think you really had me on for, is the effect that it has on the ground.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So how is that DOJ memo received? Because I know that when me and Deb and Justice saw it, we were just so flabbergasted that we literally had to jump right in and do a reaction video to it, because we were like, no. So I can't imagine what average people thought about it.
What happened is, I think in any organization you have the more active, right?
Yeah.
You have the kind of they'll show up and make a comment every now and then, if you're in a group me or whatever it is. And then you have the people who are not active at all, but just watch what's going on, right?
Right.
We had kind of an outgrowth of people from all of those camps. You had the really active people that was oh my gosh. And then, but the people you don't hear from stood up and said, why is Fair not making a more full-throated response to protect its membership, and not just its membership, but people? And that's when I retweeted one of your posts
My
that you
initial
right
article that I wrote. Yeah.
Right. I retweeted it because I said, first of all, my reaction was just the same way. I was not happy. My fellow leaders, we sat down and talked about it. We said, this is not an acceptable response, especially in red state Oklahoma, where this is going to be most needed.
Right.
Right. See, that's the other part, is that I will agree with Bayan in that it may be, I think in blue states, people are less likely to step up and do something about it in this way, or should be, because there's not the state support. You don't have the governor that signed a bill saying this won't be good.
There's no point. It's not going to go anywhere.
Exactly. But here is where it's going to go somewhere.
Yes.
And so here's where you face a big resistance to it, right? Where you just, they will, go out of their way.
All their I mean, the same thing in New Hampshire. Like it was like, I remember talking to the sponsor of the bill that came up in New Hampshire when it first got introduced, and he said, "Oh, I can't believe it's, getting this much backlash." I was like, wait a couple weeks, and then that's when they sent all of it. So you're absolutely right. Like the places where this actually can be fought and battles can actually be won, whether Biden likes it or not, they're the red states, and the red states are the ones that are going to face the most backlash from it.
That's right. And so when we read the letter, especially compared laying it down to the other letters that you'd seen, people are asking us, well, why are we with FAIR right now?
Yeah.
Right. And as middle management, not unpaid middle management, but I signed up, I'm connected to the organization. That's the way it goes. We're sitting here going, that's a great question. We need to ask them. Yeah. And so when we went to them, the standard response was, we want a pro-human response, and we want to make sure that we're not alienating. And that's what I wanted to get back to, is that the part I didn't agree with Bayan at all was that you shouldn't be thinking, okay, well, if Biden supporters are going to be doing this, reading this, how are they going to react? Especially when the other part of what he said, which I actually agree with, and I think FAIR is positioned to do, is to try to knit this divide of center right, center left, the people that agree on both sides here together. That's what FAIR is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to be the one that tries to stay as neutral as possible. But I don't know anybody who, even my most liberal center left people who disagree with CRT, who thought that letter was acceptable. Yeah. And I've got several, because I'm at the college, right? So they did not think it was acceptable. So I'm not sure what audience he actually meant. I know what audience he meant to go for, but I don't think he grabbed it, is the problem. And
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and that's what the thing I didn't think about until you just mentioned it, was the donors. Right. And that makes more sense to me. And that's something I'm going to talk to them about, because I know money runs everything.
Follow the money, honey.
Yes. And that goes right into
follow the money in that advocacy fund buy-in.
Well, and I'm hoping, this is what I told them, is that if that advocacy fund is there, right, then we should start seeing that in support of activism.
Exactly.
In the places like the red states, where, like you just said, we can make the biggest difference. And this is my big push to hold President Joe Haraz, King Joe the First or the Second, over here at the OU, because nothing can happen at OU if you don't remove the person who's responsible for the policies and protecting the teachers that are enforcing them, right? Or the professors. Because if we come out and we say, and this is just an example to illustrate what I'm talking about in terms of FAIR, is that if President Haraz wasn't there, first of all, he implanted DEI into OU and has created a division now so they could get around 1775 and do what they're doing. Yep. And so if he's doing that, and the big push from a lot of the Republicans here is go after the professors. They're the problem. First of all, most of the professors are being forced to inject this stuff into, not most, but I would say there's a healthy, I know of several personally, because I go there, right, is that have been felt forced to inject this in like a curriculum as a morality issue, right? And so they're being forced, and then the ones that aren't being forced are being supported by the division of DER, the division of ideological enforcement is what it is. And utmost by the president of the university. Mm-hmm. So what on earth do you think we're going to get out of, shaming a professor who may have done a wrong thing? And I'm saying we should highlight that, but nothing's going to happen to that professor unless the president abandons him, basically, right?
Exactly.
And the Board of Regents wouldn't do that. So I digress, but that's what I get in terms of fair, is that you guys are here as the angel on our shoulder. You're the ones that watch over your chapters. And when a national group like the Department of Justice targets members, your response needs to be in kind.
Yeah.
And not saying you have to say, let me clarify that. It needs to be as full-throated a defense as the attack was.
And I completely agree, and I want to talk more about that in one sec. I just want to take the super chat real quick. Eper is often used to describe what happened to the girl in Virginia. Good pro tip. I also want to show what Gabrielle Clark said. Those of us in blue states are in very hostile territory being called terrorists, and they just threw us to the wolves with that response. And I think that kind of goes along with what you're saying, to be honest, because, listen, like my whole thing and like where I kind of play around with is just like, I like working with average people. I like working with rabble rousers. I like trying to I have no interest in mingling with the highfalutin donors and doing the media and all that stuff. God bless the people who do. I have no interest in doing it at all. And for me, I'm a psychologist. I want to take care of people. I want people to feel supported. I want people to feel empowered. They've got to do some of the work too. Like, it can't always come from other people. We have to have an internal locus of control as well. But the fact, the letter to me, here's probably why, like, you've helped me kind of narrow down why this letter burned me so much, because it turned its back on the people who, again, many of whom have been fighting this fight for longer than Biden has. Many of whom who have been canceled, who have been called out by their family, who have been fired from their jobs for speaking up, who have put their necks on the line. And these are not
can't get jobs.
Who can't get jobs. These are not people who have the resources like Biden does to send his kids to a highfalutin private school in New York. These are people that are just like average people that just want to be able to live their lives. And, he had the power. And again, I do place ultimate responsibility on him. Like, he had the power to say, we are going to come out and support the people who are supporting this organization, because, correct me if I'm wrong, most of the people involved with FAIR are volunteers. Am I wrong? They're volunteers, or they're just like average members?
Yes. No, I mean, I know that, honestly, the only two paid individuals I've had any contact with are the volunteer coordinator and Baya. So, like, literally, there's the only two paid that I've had, other than, board of advisor members and things like that I've gotten to talk to at different times, but not usually under FAIR. And so, yeah, that's right. And that's the hard part about it. That is, you're exactly right in that it reminded me a little bit of kind of a less effective Harper's letter, in that, because the Harper's letter was really great, especially when it came out. Right. Yeah. But it began with this preamble of Trump evil, Trump bad. Right. And then it was like, this evil, this bad. And so this made this conflation, or this connection between, well, Trump is evil, and anybody who, and this got reinforced by January 6th and everything that's happened after that. Right. It's they're evil and the woke are evil and we're the middle. And so we need to strip down the middle. And I think they're having a little bit of trouble letting go of that preconceived notion that was implanted in them. That is, just because you're in a red state, just because you're in Oklahoma, or just because, you have people that are going to be active and go out and protest their boards and say, this is wrong, and stand up and scream it if you have to, right? Because when you're being shouted down, or being limited to 2 minutes, or being told that you can't read a book from the library that talks about the sexual things that you don't want your kid to read in the first place, when those kinds of things are happening, that's because of a groundswell of courage, right? And so when that's what it limited. Yeah. It just limited that. And people just went, oh, okay, I'm going to sit back.
And I just want to emphasize something you said earlier, because it took people a lot. I don't know how long you've been involved with this, but I remember when I first started getting involved with this, no one was speaking up about anything. Forget
Mhm.
these school board meetings that are going viral with like multiple parents speaking. No one was doing any of this, and it was like pulling teeth to get people to even do the bare minimum. And you're absolutely right. Like it took tremendous courage for some of these people to speak up. And I don't want to
Mhm.
diminish it absolutely takes courage for people on the left to speak up. I consider like I was one of those people. I completely understand it, but it doesn't take any less courage for people on the right to stand up. It doesn't take any less like Trump supporters. I'm sorry, like most of them are some of the like they don't do things. They don't speak up because they're
Mhm.
scared. I remember during the 2020 campaign because like I was running around doing all these rallies and I would constantly say to people, "Come to a rally, do something," and they'd be like, "Carlin, we don't." They were scared to leave their house wearing a MAGA hat. They were
Yep.
scared to put a sign in their front yard. And so like the amount of courage that has finally been mustered, and you know, I credit Chris Rufo with a lot of this because he's really done the groundwork to really help people understand what's going on and has created so much exposure to it. But like it took a lot to get people here. And
Mhm.
and the fact that buy-in doesn't seem to understand, like just on a very human level, what is
Mhm.
involved with average people who are like in your fair chapter, finding the
Mhm.
courage to go to the fair meeting and connect with other people and put themselves out there. And maybe if you're really lucky, go to a school board meeting or have them go to a teacher meeting. It is a lot. It's a
Yes. Well,
lot.
yes, it is. And this is what's also frustrating for me is that I think I've mentioned this to you before in DMs or whatever, but I can't get to the woke because I can't get past the Republicans, the milquetoast Republicans, which comprises the establishment here in Oklahoma, calling, you know, anybody who breathes the word of, that January 6th might have been not exactly what we think it is, even if it's that
Right.
nuanced, right? They automatically get thrown into this pile of, just like I had said earlier, the GOP head is being called out by the Republican governor for making a comparison historically. And so you have this kind of dual demonization. And I think that's where Bayan does have a blind spot, right? It's more so even because he's seeing these milquetoast Republicans who are saying, well, those people over there are crazy. Don't listen to them. They have nothing they're saying has any legitimacy to it. Or, they're making the same kind of Nazi comparison as the woke. And so they're trying to join Trump. The middle road of the Republicans are trying to join Trump with the woke almost, that they're
Right.
both equally crazy. And I'm not, when I say
They're not.
Trump, I want to say populist. That's a better word. I think Trump is a populist, right? And
Yes,
he
he is.
represents a populist movement that can
Mhm.
be represented by, whether it's JD Vance or it's DeSantis down in Florida. It's just a more, I'm not going to take your shit kind of way of going about things. And Republicans in Oklahoma don't do that. And so I think that's what Bayan is suffering from. But here's the thing. Here's the deal is that now he knows,
You should know.
right? Right. Well, that's where I came to Fair, and I told Fair I'm coming on your show today. I told
Mhm.
them, yeah, I told
And
you
I'm
that I
sorry,
was
you
going
like
to.
you have balls for doing that because I don't know if I would have done that. Like we were even DMing. I was like, "Tell them you hate me."
Well, but I don't need to. I don't need to say that I hate you because this is the
Yeah.
thing. If we are the people, I, the woke movement is all about shutting people up.
Yeah.
They can't win an argument because they don't think linearly and logically. So to get into an argument is them fighting on a battleground that they're not familiar with because they don't know how to use it. And so they shout you down and make you not talk, right? And so I should be able to go to Fair, and this is why I did it, because I should be able to go to Fair and go to Carlin, who may be in a spat right now. You both really do have the same goal as long as you both are being honest about what your goal is.
In
Now,
theory.
yes, the proof is in the pudding. The actions speak louder than words, and that's the point. But I should be able to go to both of you and say, hey, I work with Fair, but I'm friends with Carlin, and she's invited me on her show. I have some beef with you over here, and I have some nuance to give Carlin, right? And honestly, based upon what you had said, I expected some pushback. You know what I mean? And based upon some other stories I had heard through other avenues, I had expected some pushback. I didn't get it. I don't know why that was. I'm going to take them at the front in my experience and say, okay, that was because they don't really operate that way. But I'm not sure. With me, they did not. And they said to me, they
good.
weren't going to tell me what to do. And I said, okay. And I said, I'm going to tell you everything I'm going to tell Carlin.
Mm-hmm.
And I already had, but I told Brian everything I'm telling you. And so, and I'm coming here and I've given you, what I think is good about FAIR. And that's the other thing. And that's what I reminded them of, is that, you do want FAIR to succeed, right? I've heard you say that. I'm going to take you at your word too.
I genuinely do. I kept my mouth shut for months about what was going on with FAIR, and it's not because I was hearing about this stuff every single week. I still hear about this stuff every day now. And I kept my mouth shut, and I protected a lot of people who have a lot worse stories than what we've talked about so far, because I want FAIR to make the changes to turn this around. I really do. I behave like, people might not think it from the outside, but like, you guys have no idea how much more information I have behind the scenes than I've even tried to release. And it's all because I would like to entice buy-in to make the changes you need to make.
Well,
do the right thing.
And that's where I'm at right now, because it is also, and I'm a Christian. Are you a Christian? It doesn't matter.
I'm not. I believe in God and all that stuff, but I respect whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. I know you do. But I'm just saying, in the way I think about it, the woke lack grace. It's a religion, but it lacks the avenue for grace. So whatever religion you are, all of them have an avenue for grace, right? Yeah. And Martin Luther King was a Christian. And that's what I can't stand about the woke. It's you take that, what amounts to, maybe 3 or 4 pages worth of things that Martin Luther King has said, and you twist it while negating the just volumes of Christian, human love and connection based message he had, and try to say he was, an Ibram Kendi. And that's what we can't have. So I'm trying to apply this one aspect of grace to FAIR at the moment. I'm trying, because I was real mad. I was really, really mad, and I'm still irked. But here's the thing. You've got a chance. Here's the chance, because Oklahoma FAIR members will not deal with that kind of response again.
Yeah.
And you're talking to one of them right now. So the leader, one of the leaders, right? So, and I told them, I said, you're going to encounter, this is just the first of many encounters like this. It's going to increase as the Biden presidency goes along, especially as we see the fight against CRT and anti-racism, DEI, and the pandemic measures and all of that. As the fight against those starts to increase, the government will start to get more and more involved. And so will loudspeakers of the government. And when the government makes a statement, it becomes a policy.
Yep.
And if you want to go after policies and ideas, not people, that's it. And so you need to have a full-throated response to those policies. You don't want to mention Merrick Garland? Don't. Talk about what do what DOJ is doing. But right now, I'm so glad he's not on the Supreme Court, because if he were on the Supreme Court, the way he's operating as an attorney general, because that's how Obama, kind of trumpeted him out, is that, this is the most middle of the road. Well, it's like, he's not operating that way as the attorney general.
I still think he should have gotten a hearing, and they should have voted him down. I think they should have given him the courtesy of a hearing, because that's how the process is supposed to work. But
yes, I agree with that in spirit, but I also agree with, this government back in its best days functions well when everyone's really fighting and doing, you know what I mean? Like, when you have a divided government that's checking, that's what it's designed for. And so, although I'm not a Mitch McConnell fan. But
Mitch McConnell. He's such a.
But I'm telling you this. Yes, but I'll tell you this. I think we would be in a world of hurt right now if he were sitting on the Supreme Court. And so let him be Attorney General for as long as that lasts, and then get out the door, bro. But it's where was I going with that? It's just the policies. Mm-hmm. Don't go after the guys. Go after the policies. If you want to go after the ideas, do that. But do it in a way that your membership can grab a hold of and not lose faith to go out and make the activist stand that they need to make. And that goes into what else we talked about with them, which is the activism. That is missing at FAIR.
And I think
And
you had a great suggestion, because like they've got that advocacy fund. That advocacy fund was the main donation fund on their website until I talked about it, and then they changed it. But like, you know what, Brian? Give the chapters money and resources to do activism. Give them
right.
suggestions. Give them grassroots training on how to do it. There are so many things. Run people for school board, which is what you said you were doing anyway. Like be responsible with the money, and like let them go and do things.
Yes, and that is the thing that they did mention, because when I brought that up initially with the volunteer coordinator, who again is just the most lovely person. She's just awesome. I love her. But she mentioned, well, you know, because I brought up Martin Luther King, and I said, you have his message, you've got his pro-human message, you've got the content of character, you've got the you know, the love not hate, the darkness cannot drive out darkness, only love can, you know, light can do that. You've got that message, but you've, I think, ignored that grassroots activism that gets people on the ground and pushing that, because what they have done is they've given us curriculum, they've given us things we can go to schools with, and I think that is part of activism, but it's not the part that makes people have the courage enough to stand up to the school boards and stand up when their kid comes home and says, you know, I'm being labeled as an oppressor because, you know, of the color of my skin, right? Because those people won't go to fair without, you know, the louder activist voices saying, hey, you've got somebody to go to. And that's what frustrated with me about the social media thing. Nobody gets their news, even in Oklahoma, right? I mean, most people are getting their news from Facebook, from Twitter, from those lines of things. They may watch the local news, but most people aren't watching any other news. And so that's why I felt a bit hamstrung in starting an activist movement, or starting more of an active group, is that I couldn't make the points I needed to make with the banner of fair, right? To get them to come to the meetings, to get them to go to the school board. Does that make sense? Because, right, we want to be so pro-human that we appear non-confrontational.
You couldn't get their attention on social media. Social media is a food fight.
Right.
It is a food fight.
Right.
And that's so when you say that you need to be the guy that comes in with the big bucket that dumps it on the unarmed guy. Like, you don't need to do that, but you do need to be able to get people's attention.
Right. And that's the thing that I've been able to do. And again, if you go to the James Lindsay School of Twitter, right, that's what he's really good at.
Yeah.
That he'll catch you with something that seems off color or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're reading this dissertation about how, you know, Marxism is ingrained in CRT and exactly the reasons why. But the reason he has that following is not just because he tells truth to power.
Let's be honest, it's the mom.
Yeah, that's true. But it is. That's my point.
It is.
Right? It is part of it where you catch people's attention, and because you have all this minutia coming at you. That's what FAIR lacks a little bit of at the ground level in the chapters. And some of that is our chapter leadership. And I'm not going to say that I've been the best chapter leader. I think that just like the national organization, I've made mistakes and not done enough here, not done enough there. But in our first meetings, it wasn't about what we could do in marshaling people to get out to the school board meetings. That wasn't what it was about. It was about what we couldn't say. You know, and that kind of just left us with
the brand of FAIR.
Yes. And I understand, again, they want to knit these two. I think there's almost more mental distance between center left, don't want to be labeled conservatives, and center right, don't want to be labeled liberals, than there is almost between the woke and the opposite end of the spectrum. Because it's just, they cannot get over this 1990s, 2001 mindset of, well, you're a liberal and I can't. And it's like, that's why I didn't like, and I will not mention anything else because I know your rule. I hate the abortion debate right now. I hate it because it is this thing that's been dropped in the middle of what we're trying to do with CRT that we all agree on, right?
Yes. But
it's the ultimate of divisive issues.
Yep.
And so then when you start injecting that in, regardless of you're going to just bubble up all of these things, and they're going to go, you know, screw you guys, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in local, you know, races and stuff here now. Is we've got two conservative candidates in you know, running against the mayor who defunded the police, the only place in like Midwest and in Oklahoma that did it.
I heard about this. Yeah.
Oh, Oh, and then you've got the mayor who's, Kendi. I mean, just promoting the book on social media and doing it for mayor's book clubs and all this stuff. And then you've got someone who's apparently even more left of her, right? And so you have these factions that we split into because we cannot get through our brain. Okay, let's table the abortion thing for just a moment because our society is being attacked from the inside out.
Right.
And if we don't get rid of this, your money for your arena, OU, it won't matter. Republicans that want that to build commerce, and you're making deals with, the woke mayor or whatever it may be, to get more goodness and more people to look at Norman, Oklahoma as a good thing. It's not going to matter. In 5 years, this state will be blue. When I say blue, I mean dark, like woke blue.
Oh, yeah.
And so these divisive issues that we need to table for a little while, and I think FAIR can help with that, but they don't help when they don't support their membership on both sides of the issue. And I'm hoping, and I'm going to stick with FAIR right now. And that's what I told them, that I want to see how you're going to change this.
And they need to change quick.
And I want to give you the suggestion. I want to tell you and your audience the suggestions that I made, because I think it needs to be proof in the pudding. We need to have, they need to have an advisory board that is not their famous advisory board. Okay. I mean, I love Daryl Davis. I love Chris Rufo. I love Barry Weiss. I love all of those
Chris Rufo's not on the board anymore.
I know that, and I talked to him about that, and he said everything left amicably. As far as I'm not going to speak for him at all, but everything seems fine. But he did leave, but it's the advisory board you lack. Where your blind spot is what I'm telling you right now, is that you need some people from these red states, from these that speak to you, your leadership, Bion, Barry, the volunteer coordinator, weekly about what they're seeing. And then when something like this happens, that, okay, you take a meeting with your board of advisors, you take a meeting with your board of directors, and you take a meeting with your PR people, and then you take a meeting with the people on the ground.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is that he said that he was scared that, they were going to be, that if they did too much more than what they did, that they were going to be castigated as being, TDS or too far right. And if that's your fear, then you're not going to be effective.
I'm sorry, he doesn't understand the right if he thinks that. I'm sorry, Bion, you need to like actually talk to real people, dude, because he does not understand the right if he thinks that. Jesus
right. Well, we wouldn't get what ticked us off was the letter. So it's like, yeah. But if you would listen to just like you said, the people on the ground will, if you talk to us, you can help sway our opinion, and we can help sway yours, so we can get the actual, if you want middle of the road with just enough bite and just enough openness, I think that could have been a possibility. I see what they were trying to do, but they failed. But if you would have talked to me, if you would have talked to your FAIR leadership in Texas more about that letter and that but not about the response, I think you would have avoided this situation. So that is one thing that I told them. I said, you need to make sure that you have a normal people board of advisors, that when something like this happens, they have a voice in the support you're giving them.
Right.
And if you don't do that, you're going to lose us. You just will. The other part of it was the activist part of it. Okay. Give us the curriculum to go in and talk to the administrators. If you want to, I'm not sure about the whole diversity thing. I fear I fear accepting the premise that the diversity training is necessary in the first place.
I agree. And I'm an organizational psychologist. It is not necessary in the first place.
Right.
There are other types of training that have nothing to do with the color of people's skins. There are other types of trainings you could do that are much more effective.
Right. And I just want to be upfront. I'm not sure I mentioned that to them specifically, but I'm going to, but accepting that premise and bring us in, that was just a tangential thing. But the next thing is that activism component. There has to be, that was the volunteer coordinator mentioned to me in our talk. She said, well, you realize that Martin Luther King and the SNCC and all of them did months of activism training. And I said, exactly. That's
your activism training.
Right, exactly. And that's what Republicans, okay, because in Oklahoma, most of the people against this are old school Republicans, okay, who activism is a dirty word, and you can use the word advocacy, right?
Yeah,
okay, whatever you want to call it, but it's still active and it's still in your face, and it makes you not be able to be ignored. And so give us that training. Do exactly that. And now that you've got the diversity stuff in, you've got the curriculum stuff in, pivot that advocacy fund to hiring somebody or a group of people to come out to your chapters and train your leaders to train the people on the ground. Yeah. Because that's the other part, and this connects to OU, and I've wanted to make this point to an audience, is that the president before the woke president we have right now was not woke at all. Not the way he worked. And he had just got hired. He was here for eight months, one school year. And what happened is that's when it was right before COVID. And, these overblown manufactured narratives on campus were woven together to create a backlash against him that lost him the Board of Regents, and he resigned. And that was all out of an active group, right? Yeah. And now the tack from the Republicans here is we want to get rid of CRT at OU, but not that way, because that way is bad.
Yeah.
Then we're fighting on a different battleground. So FAIR, my message to you, get us active. Support our activism, our advocacy on the ground. Give us the training for that specific purpose. Take the SNCC playbook and give it, give us that kind, because I don't know it either. I'm learning on the job, right? So those are my two gripes, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to fix those two deficiencies, because they are new and they deserve that, at least at the offset. I can't speak to what Bion does behind closed doors, but I'll tell you, if he is doing the things that you've reported on, if he is doing those things, it is up to the leadership to hold him accountable. If he is doing those things will come out, because people are looking for them. Okay. So if they're not, then if he's not doing those things, then we owe it to him to correct his mistake until he makes another one. But like I said, I will be the first one on your show again. If we get another letter like that, if we get another mealy-mouthed, I'm just going to be mealy-mouthed response to a tyrannical government trying to target a certain group of people, even if they didn't put it in policy.
And there will be another opportunity for this. There is no chance. There is no chance in this universe that there is not going to be another opportunity. So no, I think that's a completely respectable position. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I genuinely want FAIR to be successful. I think that they are still too new of an organization where it's perfectly possible that they can be successful. I think that some of the things that I haven't talked about can still be turned around. I have a lot of questions about buy-in, but you know what? Listen, sometimes people make dramatic 360s, but I'll say a couple things. Like, I agree with everything you said. I believe that it is, it is always, listen, I changed my mind after being a Democrat for 20 years. So I am always open to changing my mind. I always believe that people have the ability to change. Whether they have the propensity to change is another thing. And so I always like leaving the door open to change. I always want to have the best, I want people to do the right thing. I will say a couple things. Number one, if Biden doesn't think that the federal government is going to be keeping an eye on his organization, and particularly the financial aspect of his organization, like, he is out of his damn mind. They are absolutely going to be audited. There's absolutely going to be investigated. He's probably going to be investigated by the FBI. And so if Biden doesn't have the proper paperwork filed, as I suspect he doesn't, like, he needs to get on that now, because that would be an absolute nightmare. It's going to happen. And if he hasn't wrapped his head around the fact that it's going to happen yet, FAIR is one of the organizations that has the most resources of any of these organizations. And it's going directly against what the federal government wants. And so I have a
question for you. Could that be the reason for the letter being the way it was.
It could absolutely be the reason for the letter being the way it was. He didn't want to piss off the DOJ and the FBI. I don't know, but I also don't think, like, I almost want to say, like, I almost want to plead ignorance here on behalf of Biden, because I really think that he has Trump derangement syndrome. I really think that he's not fully plugged into reality yet. Maybe he just doesn't know. But, like, you know, regardless of if I am right or if I am wrong about the paperwork that has or has not been filed, and I'm going to leave the door open that I maybe just haven't found it yet. He needs to file that paperwork, and he needs to make sure his affairs are in order, and he needs to make sure that all the books, and especially that advocacy fund, is buttoned up, because he is opening the organization and every single person involved in it and every single person that has donated millions of dollars to it. He is opening every single person involved up for a world of hurt if he hasn't taken care of that. But number two, like, my biggest concern is always and will forever be average people that do not have the resources that Brian Bartning or Barry Weiss or Melissa Chen have. People that struggle to put food on the table, are living paycheck to paycheck, and are already sticking their necks out to speak out on this issue. That will always be my number one concern. Now, I've heard a lot behind the scenes of people that Biden has thrown under the bus, and they are average people who are in vulnerable positions who he should have taken better care of. And if I continue to hear, like, I don't want to talk about fair forever. To be really honest, there are many other subjects I'd rather be talking about right now. But if I continue to hear that average people are being affected by your behavior, Biden, we're going to revisit this topic, and I'm not fucking around. And I hope you know at this point that I'm not screwing around. And there are a whole bunch of other whistleblowers behind the scenes who haven't talked yet, but just because they haven't talked yet doesn't mean they aren't going to. Because if I continue to hear that normal people are being hurt by this, like, gloves are coming off. And if Biden thinks I have thrown everything I have at him so far, he ain't seen nothing yet. Dave Rubin did not call me the world's most dangerous knitter for nothing. I do not fuck around. And so I genuinely hope I don't have to, because I would like to go back to start, like, to continue to fight the woke, not this organization. I want them to do the right thing. I want them to take care of people. I want them to be more sensitive to the needs of what the people involved need, like people like you and the people that are in your chapter. I want them to be more sensible about what the whistleblowers need that he's throwing under the bus, and being more like understanding where they're coming from and how much courage it took to get them to this position. And if he doesn't change that and I continue to hear this shit, it's on, Biden. I swear to God.
Well, and I'll be the first to say I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, just like you right now. But if I find that is true, I'll be right there with you. And I think that's what anyone should expect, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing, well, he and the organization, I think, are suffering from a massive growth spurt. And the first step to figuring out how to walk after you've gained, 8 inches in height, over 3 months or something, is you have to just revisit the small things. That's where he has to go now. And the small things are your chapter and your chapter leaders and your chapter members, and getting them involved, and less worry about whoever your donors are, less worry about the backlash you might get in New York, you might get in California or wherever, and more worried about the front lines of this is in the red states, because you're right, it's where you can do something about it. Because as long as there's a Biden in the White House, or a governor that's running those states, or secretaries of education that are pushing this down the throats of the teachers, into the children, into the families, the blue states are lost until we can get the red states secured, because that's where we can make the fight, and then we go out.
And guess what? There are a lot of kids in those red states that can be protected. And there is a lot of good that FAIR can do with those millions of dollars. FAIR could open up schools if they wanted to. They could literally open up, like, come to New Hampshire, Biden. You can get a grant for like $1.5 million to open up a charter school where you could actually teach the curriculum that you've developed. Like, these are some of the types of things that they can do. And so, like, it does, like, the people need to start thinking strategically. Like, we can't save everyone right now, because, like you said, there are some states that are just lost. It is not possible. But you can save some. And we need to be making progress where we can. And guess what? If you can have successes in the red states, if you can actually demonstrate a significant difference between doing it this way and what the public schools are doing right now in terms of outcomes, then you're going to be in a much stronger position to make the argument. And that is what we need to start getting more strategic about this. I'm just like this is a little like side tangent, like,
No,
and I'm not ranting.
You are speaking my language right now.
I am so goddamn sick of like doing things that don't actually make a goddamn difference in the lives of normal people. Like, Twitter is not real life. It is not real. Most people are not even on Twitter. And it's like we need to like, and I understand that the stuff I'm talking about, it's not the sexy thing. It's not the thing that's going to get you on like Tucker Carlson. It's not going to but it's going to make a difference in the real lives of real people. And that's where we should be focusing on, because that is the majority of people out there. And if we get that audience, then we win the culture war. And the culture war is what matters.
Yes, you are speaking my language. So, because the strategy has been wrong, especially like here in Oklahoma. I was the first person in the state of Oklahoma to talk to the governor about CRT. It was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And I had went to the local group that kind of got started up because of defund the police. And they got, through this person, all of a sudden I'm sitting down at a, breakfast place with Governor Stitt. And I went through for an hour and just talked to him. Right. And it just sat. Nothing else was said about it until Rufo and James and you. And that's when it all just started to blow up. Right. And it was magical. All of a sudden, these bills just started popping out because the state legislatures, are, and I was pro legislation, absolutely pro legislation. But this is not a curriculum issue in red states. That's what people don't understand. No. This is a teacher pipeline issue.
Yes.
And a certification issue and a materials issue, because the materials you can find all the way down to pre-K, where you have flashcards that are given to kids, that lend yourself to talking about, systemic racism when you're trying to just teach a kid what a doctor is or an elephant is, right? But the way that and these are all brand new materials that have been rebought by say the Norman Public Schools, right? That lend the teacher that came from OU College of Education, right, over here, lend to that teacher who will just go down and be like, oh, I know what to do with this. It doesn't have to be in the curriculum, right? And that's so what I've been saying is that none of this is going to matter if we don't cut off the pipeline of teachers.
Right.
And that's why my issue with school choice. I am pro school choice. I think that we should give kids the opportunity to go to the school. The money follows the kid.
Yes.
Right?
I agree.
I agree. But what I'm fearful of is that we're going to get this university modeled. It's because that's what a university is. It's quasi-public, quasi-private, and sits in this little hampered thing that now the universities have been taken over by Woke Inc. If you want to do Vivek Ramaswamy, right? They've been taken over by that because of the financial interest. And we're going to create all of these new awesome charter schools, and you need one woke administrator. Just one. 20 years from now, not today, 20 years from now, when all the people who are using CRT to just get, school choice or just, do other aspects, but they refuse to go after the source of the problem. And they could. This Board of Regents at OU could abandon Haraz just like they abandoned Gallagly, and he would resign, or they could fire him. They could remove DEI just as easy as they put it in. But now we're having a free speech, a diversity, equity, inclusion free speech week. Oh man, Carlin, I want to send you
the most Orwellian thing I've ever heard in my life. What the hell is that?
Can I come back on your show in a week or two to talk about this letter? Because this letter is I did a whole spiel on it. I think I sent it to you. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. But it is the most bass-ackwards thing I've ever seen. Because you say free speech, but diversity and making sure that people feel that they can have free speech. I can't even articulate it without reading it to you. It is so bass-ackwards. But they think somehow that doing school choice all by itself and legislation that will only really apply to the public schools, because charter schools may not apply that way,
Right.
is going to somehow fix this problem. And it's not.
It's not.
You have,
and we've always said that. Like
Right.
this is like throwing sand in the gears, as James Lindsay likes to say. It like slows them down, and I also think it's important from a moral perspective to like put a stake in the ground and say this is what our values are. But it was never going to solve the problem. The only way that we solve the problem is by winning the culture. And I absolutely do agree with you that I think that the biggest problem that we're facing are the teachers. The teacher training programs, like, and I've said this a million times, but like almost every single teacher that is teaching today was trained by a teacher educator who was already indoctrinated into this ideology. So it's like fixing the problem is not only about changing the curriculum or giving them new stuff or doing any of these things. You have to train an entire new generation of teachers and an entire new generation of teacher trainers. And I gotta be honest, like I'm pretty burnt on this issue right now. I've gotten very accelerationist. I'm all about like defund the public schools, just like, we need to blow it up and start over again. I know that's not necessarily realistic. Maybe in my state of New Hampshire it is, but maybe in most places.
Live free or die.
Yeah, exactly. And but like that is like, I completely agree with you that is one of the most critical problems that we're facing. It's why I kind of switched from talking about this stuff in organizations where it's still a problem, but it's like it's reinforcing what's already been done in the schools. And the fact that this is starting so early now is the biggest problem.
But imagine if those organizations that you were fighting start supporting school choice schools as private donors, just like they do universities, right?
Exactly.
Imagine the metastasizing of that cancer. And I'm going to take you one step further. And I'm going to go back to my primary point, because what the woke lack is a singular person or an entity to attack, right? They splinter themselves out. In every state, you have one person, the presidents of your colleges and the boards of regents that have implanted and allowed this to happen, especially in red states like Oklahoma, because the people here do not support it. They do not. And they see what it's doing to their schools and to their kids. And Joe Haraz should be removed as president of that college because he's violating federal law. He's violating federal law. And you shall not discriminate.
And let me just bring up, I'll bring up your petition real quick. And guys, I do have this linked in the description below. UnWokeable has a petition for this exact thing. Please go sign it, add your name, subscribe to the Substack, all of that, because he's doing really, really, really good work. And I like, and you're doing it in the way it should be done, which is like you're tackling local issues on the local level. You're organizing in the community. That is the only way this is going to get solved, is by bringing people that in person along.
Well, and that's the thing I want to do with my UnWokeable Substack, and what I'm going to try to. This is my very first video podcast. I just want to point that out. You are my coming out ceremony. Okay, nobody. That's been
broken your cherry. I've broken your cherry. Mount that like button, everyone. Mount the like button.
Yes, but it's actually been neat because I've had a.
Popped your cherry, not broken. Jesus Christ. Popped that. God damn it. I am such a fucking boomer.
Yeah, there you go. But I've been kind of a mystery around here because I just kind of came out as UnWokeable, and then people, I didn't put my picture
I didn't
up
even know what your name was until right before this. I knew you was UnWokeable.
I don't want it to be about me. That's the thing. At first, it was out of fear. I'm going to be honest about that. I had to work through the fear, especially around here in that I'm talking about with what happens with the membership. But then it became kind of like a cult following. It's like, who's UnWokeable? Who is this guy that's calling out the president? And and it's like, I'm going to start a YouTube cast that's going to be about local issues.
Yay!
Local like a local news, because the local news here has been bought and paid for either by the University of Oklahoma or the woke organizations that are funding that. And that's going to be one of my first stories, is who owns the Norman transcript. I love it. Because that's what I think. We can't all be Carlin. We can't all be James. We can't all be Chris. We can't all be these, you guys who have these bigger audiences. Maybe we'll get there one day, but where we can fit into this cog, and where I think FAIR, if they make the right choices, can help with all of this, is going at your local issues, but doing it in a way that people can see on a mass level, just like this.
Honestly, like, I think there's value in my platform, and I'm very grateful
Yes.
for the people that are on my platform and, all that. But one of the best ideas I ever heard from someone was that what she said to me, she said, Carlin, I'm going to start a YouTube channel, but I don't want it to get big like yours. I just want to make videos talking about these issues so I can share them with my friends and family and they can hear me talking. And I was like, that is probably, honestly, she's probably going to convert more people than I will. If she's doing because her friends and family are going to share that video out, and it's going to be someone they know and they can relate to, and they know like people think I'm crazy. They look at my hair, they're like, oh my god, what does she have to say? And it's like, and so it's like I don't necessarily think a point, and I'm really glad you brought this up. Is like the point I want to impress upon people is like you don't. I hear this all the time. People are like, Carlin, I don't have a platform. You don't need a platform. You don't need 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. You don't need tens of thousands of followers or hundreds of thousands in Lindsay's case. Like on Twitter, you don't need that. You just need to share your message with people around you. And that's probably going to have more impact in the long run than even something like this. I mean, there's value at all levels. We have to work at all levels, but it's not any less valuable.
Well, and I that takes me, if you haven't listened to James's most recent podcast, I was one of the first people, I think, to hear about this concept. He did a podcast with Benjamin Boyce where he brought it up initially. So that was the first time I heard it. But he's talking about this the new enlightenment that's happening right now, that we've really been in this feudal state, right? Through the 20th century, when we thought we were in this new freedom of information, and I think it was more free. We had more access to information. But what you're saying feeds into his theory of that, no, we're actually entering the real enlightenment right now because of what you're saying, that we can share information unbridled. We can find information unbridled, not checked by a news company, not checked by a college, not checked by a professor, and then make our own video and share that information with our family because they trust us. And then they can look it up. But it's this new birth of information and information sharing that I think he's really onto something. He's seeing the crest of this new, of the way that we will view history, or the way that we have viewed history being not quite in context now, right? We're in this new age, and I'm hoping that his white pill goes, because that's what he said yesterday in his podcast. It is, he's taking a white pill on this because what this means is a new birth of freedom. Even though and I think the woke could be an example of the last gasp of air of tyranny before that new birth of freedom. I'm hoping that, but we've got to do the small things first. Yeah. The small things.
And don't be afraid of doing the small things. Yes. Don't be afraid of doing the small things. Don't be afraid. Like maybe you get 10 views on something. So what? Yeah. That's 10 people. That's 10 people who listen to what you had to say. And maybe 2 of those people will share what you had to say. And, it's like, we get so caught up in this numbers game that like people miss what the point of all of this is.
Yes, but let me take you back to our full circle discussion. I don't know if you have to go. I don't know. But it is fair. You, James, Chris, you all, your job then becomes to be the angels on our shoulders, the stealth bombers that clear the field when we need it. We're doing the groundwork. We're the soldiers on the ground. That means if you miss or you drop a dummy bomb or, it doesn't, and I'm using this analogy, I hope it doesn't hurt YouTube or anything like that. But it's like, if you miss what your real job is to support the people on the ground, fix that. Yeah. Fix that. Because that's what you guys do so well. That's what you've done. James has been so generous. I mean, I never thought, and that's what I love. Even Chris, it's like, you see these people, you guys on TV and all of this stuff, you all are so generous with your time. Yeah. And you will retweet that. If we have 50 followers, you'll retweet that thing to get us enough momentum to get over that hump, to take that hill that's in front of us. And that's where you guys, it's a knitting together. And this will be, I think, the last thing. I shared this. I listen to Glenn Beck sometimes. I used to listen to him a lot when I was younger. And then I went kind of more left and then I went back. But I've rediscovered him because he was right about so much. Back when he was on Fox, he could go off the rails for sure. And that's why I kind of honestly went, ooh, I voted for Obama the first time, by the way. Not the second time, but the first time.
Geniuses can sometimes be a little crazy. There's a thin line between genius and madness, okay?
Right. Yep. I went Bush, Obama, Romney.
You voted for Romney. Oh.
Yeah. Well,
Ugh.
what are the choices by the time Obama? Either way, that's all history. But um, he, he did a podcast with Megyn Kelly, Glenn Beck did, and he was talking about the last conversation he had with Billy Graham. And regardless of Christian or not, Billy Graham is a wise person, and he asked Billy Graham, who we need another Lincoln, we need another, Reagan or Kennedy or whomever you want to say to come and lead us.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy Graham said to him, "That's not how it's going to happen this time, Glenn." He said, the way it's going to happen this time is you're going to have pockets of people that pop up all over the country. And your job and the job of the people that have your kind of influence is to knit them together.
Yeah.
That's it. And so I hope FAIR can fix the things that it needs to fix internally, externally, because if they don't, I will take my followers, and or not my followers. I will take our
Like you're in a
my
cult.
chat. No. But this chapter won't go with you if you don't support us like that. That's what we need the most. And so, and thank you so much, because I think the conversation you've had about FAIR should make them better.
I hope it does.
And I hope that's your goal. And that's what I sense today, is that that's your goal, right? And that's my goal, because there's been so much money thrown into that. Let's use it. Right?
Exactly.
And if there is, FAIR is not one person either, right? Mm-hmm. And so if there is issues in leadership, whether it's Bion, whether it's whomever it may be, fix those so that the organization doesn't get trumped.
That's exactly right. Nothing would make me happier than to see that organization do what it needs to do. Even if it meant, even if Bion turns it around, nothing would make me happier, because at the end of the day, we need to put the petty bullshit aside, and we need to focus on what we're actually trying to do. We're not going to make any progress when nonsense like this is going on. And if he continues to do wrong, I will continue to call him out, because frankly, they're too big. They're taking too many of the resources. And if they aren't going to use those resources well, I'm going to have something to say about it. And I hope Bion has now figured out that I will hear about it if you're not doing what you should be doing. I absolutely will. I always want to take a few last super chats. And this is actually relevant too. George Andre Velasco Nunez says, I just had a mental image of you stabbing people. Nunez. I need to pronounce his name right.
Nunez.
Of stabbing you in the eye with knitting needles. I always have my knitting needles, dude.
Right.
You stand up for what you care about, like a lioness. I mean, at the end of the day, I became a psychologist because I care about helping people. And if, I find out that people are not treating others like they should be in this context, yeah, you're goddamn right. I will stand up for them.
And we do a disservice. Just one last thing. We do a disservice by not holding them accountable if we have questions.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to ask the questions, and I think you should be commended for that. So
yeah. And Adrian said, welcome, UnWokeable. Give them hell and let me know how I can help.
Adrian and I are great friends.
Is in the house. Thank you so much for coming on the channel today and having what I think was a really frank but also really fair conversation. No pun, maybe a pun intended, maybe a slight pun intended.
Slight pun.
Because, I genuinely hope that this is watched. And I genuinely hope that maybe if this isn't watched, at least they heard you, because I think that if they use this well, they got a lot of information that can help them be better. And we all need them to be better. Just one says, 123 says, what is UnWokeable's email? I don't know if you feel comfortable giving out your email, but how can people contact you if they want to get in touch?
They can contact me through my Twitter handle is Acts Against CRT, my email is the exact same thing. So it's actsagainstcrt@gmail, and then my Substack, you can also message me off of there. So that's unwokeable.substack.com. And those are the three places right now. And I'm hoping to start my YouTube channel here soon. So watch out for that. But yeah.
And I have linked them in the description below, so you guys should have access to that. And let's just one more time, let's just take a look at this this awesome hoodie. Yes. Guys, make sure you pick up a hoodie. Come on, hoodie, t-shirt, whatever your thing is, as worn and modeled by the one and only James Lindsay, right there.
Do you have that picture of what it says on the back? Because that's what
Yeah.
I don't like about the way they presented this, is that you can't see exactly what's said, because I think it's just
Make it
really
bigger.
good. Yeah.
It's a little blurry. It says,
Yeah,
not,
it's a not. Go ahead.
ahead.
You go
You
ahead.
you do it. It's your T-shirt. You
Okay,
present
this is all James' words, right? But not participating in the transparent lies or mass delusion, and doing so against the madness of the following crowd. When you're throwing a tantrum, you're definitely not being based.
it. Yep.
And the front is a Solzhenitsyn quote. Don't let the lie come through. Let the lie come in. Let it even win, but not through me. And that's all from James on New Discourses. He defined the term.
I love it. I'm definitely going to get that hoodie. I love it. All right, UnWokeable, thank you for coming on. We'll definitely have you on again. There's also something I want to talk to you offline about. But we'll definitely have you on again. Whenever you want to come on, just reach out, let me know. I loved everything about this chat today. I thought it was
me
really,
too.
really
Thank
good.
you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And thanks for popping my cherry. It was great.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we have for today. I'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. and we're going to be watching. Check this out. Tomorrow, we are watching for Happy Hour, a Black queer feminist training. So we've got the trifecta of intersectionality. Yeah. I will also be drinking. If you want to drink too, I would encourage it because, again, Black, queer, and feminist. So we've got a lot of intersectionality going on tomorrow at 3 p.m. for Happy Hour. So we'll see you guys then. Take care. Have a good rest of your day.